local narrative and the speeches that Modi gave in Hindi, he pointed out that Chandrayaan-3 is going to be the first probe that's going to land on the South Pole. Now, it seems like Russia is going to beat them to the game. It appears like that, right? Because the Russian landing is on August 21st. Schedule landing is August 21st, and India's landing is 23rd. Russia took a much more direct approach to the moon. So I think this is going to create, it might not be visible, but this creates that kind of anxiety.
From the Defense and Aerospace Report, this is The Downlink, a podcast about the intersection of space, the space business, and defense. Not just what's over the horizon, but what's happening above it. I'm your host, Laura Winter. Welcome back to the Downlink podcast. This week's episode is the tale of two lunar landers. The stage is the moon's south pole, where you can find and possibly extract two key volatiles, oxygen and hydrogen. The ingredients of water and rocket fuel have been found there in the form of water ice. This week, each of the lander teams will attempt what no one has achieved before, a soft touchdown in the lunar south. All previous attempts have crashed. The players are two major spacefaring nations, India, the world's largest democracy. The other is Russia, an autocracy engaged in a treaty shredding and bloody land grab in Europe. For almost 6 decades, India and Russia have worked well together in arms sales and development, in educational exchanges, and in the space domain. India's first astronaut, Rakesh Sharma, punched through the Kármán line in 1984 aboard a Soyuz T-11 rocket bound for the Soviet Union's Salyut 7 space station. But that relationship just isn't so warm and fuzzy anymore. And the timing, as well as the missions themselves, are a stark illustration of the evolving competition between two divergent visions for the future of space commerce, and space security. One version is encapsulated in a rules-based system enshrined in the United States-led Artemis Accords, which India signed in June. The other is China's International Lunar Research Station program, which counts Russia and Venezuela as partners. To set up this week's events, which could see two moon landings touching down just shy of 150 kilometers apart, we have Namrata Goswami and Pavel Luzin. Here is our conversation. Hello, Namrata. Pavel, welcome back to the Downlink podcast.
Thank you for having us, Laura.
Thanks for the invitation.
You know, it's been too long since I've had you on the podcast, and that goes double for you, Pavel. So we need to do some brief introductions. Namrata, why don't you start?
Sure, Laura. So my name is Namrata Goswami, and I am an independent scholar on space policy and international relations. I also teach space policy at the Thunderbird School of Global Management, Arizona State University. And recently, I co-authored a book called Scramble for the Skies, the Great Power Competition to Control the Resources of Outer Space. Great to be here.
And Pavel, it's been a while and a lot has changed, especially your city, state, and postal code. You're no longer in St. Petersburg, Russia, but here in the United States. So take a moment to introduce yourself, what you're doing, and where the audience can access your work.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pavel Luzin. I am a PhD in international relations, and currently I am in the United States, in Boston. I am a visiting scholar at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. I am also a senior fellow at Jamestown Foundation in DC. I am also a non-resident senior fellow at Center for European Policy Analysis, also in DC. My primary topics are Russian military sector, Russian space policy, and of course, Russian foreign policy.
Again, thank you both for joining me today to discuss the latest in the moon race. We're going to start by setting the scene for what's happening in just a few days. A deeply prideful and perhaps territorial face-off with both Russian and Indian moon missions arriving at the moon's southern polar region at nearly the same time, possibly just hours apart. Namrata, why don't you start with the Indian mission, as it was the first to launch in July? What are the mission's goals? What does it mean to the Indian population, especially in light of the crushing hangover from Chandrayaan 2?
Thank you for that question, and I agree with you. There has been a crushing hangover from Chandrayaan 2. So, for your audience, Chandrayaan 2 was the mission that India launched in 2019 and attempted to soft land in the South Pole, and the mission failed in the last few seconds, and that resulted in enormous level of disappointment and also heartbreak because the whole nation was watching. So, fast forward to this month, as we all know, India launched the Chandrayaan 3 mission on July 14, as Laura said. It's entered lunar orbit on August 5th. And today it's around the moon and is hoping to land, soft land on the moon by August 23rd. So the Chandrayaan 3 mission is actually a follow on mission from the Chandrayaan 2. And the idea is that with this particular mission, India hopes to demonstrate three critical goals. One is that it has the capability to land safely and soft on the moon. So that's an important capability that India wants to showcase through the Chandrayaan 3 because the Chandrayaan 2 failed in that particular effort.
And can I just butt in for a quick second? With Chandrayaan 1, didn't they slam something into the moon?
They slammed the orbiter into the moon. So the Chandrayaan 1 mission had an orbiter, and that was used to basically confirm the presence of water ice, and that's what happened in that particular mission. But there was no lander or rover, so there was no deliberate process to land on the moon in that particular mission.
And so, what are the goals then for Chandrayaan 3? Like, what are they trying to do there?
So, as I mentioned, the first goal is to demonstrate a safe and soft landing on the lunar surface. The second important goal is to demonstrate a rover that can move on the moon's surface. So, basically, a very important mission. And the third goal is to conduct certain in situ scientific experiments. So, India has sent about four experiments on the lander and two experiments that will be on the rover. And the idea is that this is the first time that India will actually land on another planetary surface. India's never done that. The Mars mission and the Chandrayaan 1 mission did not have a lander or a rover. And so these are the goals for this particular mission. So the idea is that India wants to showcase that it has end to end lunar capacity. So launch, propulsion, orbiter, lander, and rover. So these are the very clear, very simple, but very critical goals for India's Chandrayaan 3 mission.
And what does the Chandrayaan mission mean specifically to Prime Minister Narendra Modi? I mean, personally, we all know that ISRO's Chandrayaan lunar exploration campaign, is an Indian effort, but it's also called the Modi to the Moon program as well. So, what does it mean to the actual leader of the nation?
So, if you think about India's lunar mission, it was not truly under the Narendra Modi government that it started. It started under the Congress government. And so, 2008 was a very different regime in power. And so, fast forward to the Chandrayaan 3 mission, for Modi and the Bharatiya Janata Party that Modi leads, the Chandrayaan 3 mission has two critical internal goals. One is that it showcases a rising space power. So that's why the importance for the Indian Space Research Organization, which is a part of the civilian diplomatic effort of India to showcase its space capability, that it can actually carry out a landing mission on another surface. So that's very important for Modi. Second, what is interesting is that today is India's Independence Day, August 15, when India got independent from the British in 1947. And Prime Minister Modi actually gave a speech today to the people of India. And he pointed out that the critical importance of the Chandrayaan 3 mission is to showcase that India has the ability to inspire its young people to invest in a space future where the moon becomes a part of India's effort. Second, what is interesting personally to Modi is that this means that Modi can now showcase India's Chandrayaan 3 mission success if it lands successfully as part of its re election campaign next year, which is 2024. So you can see that in the speech that he actually referred to India's space mission. And finally, what was even more interesting to me was that he showcased the contribution of women to the Chandrayaan 3 mission and the importance that India's women scientists play in the development of India's scientific temper. So he's made it a very personal story, in my estimation.
Now, Pavel, now that we understand a bit what the stakes are for India, I want you to tell us about what Roscosmos hopes to achieve from its Luna 25 mission. What's the importance of this mission to the people of the Russian Federation? Does the fact that this is a time of war actually intensify the anticipation, or do people feel like there are more important things to, focus on? Meh. What's the feeling amongst the people in Russia for this mission?
So, firstly, Luna 25 is a long term, long delayed homework of the Russian civil space program. Originally, it started in 1997, so 26 years ago. Then, when Russia got a lot of petrodollars in early 2000s and was ready to invest into space exploration, Russia started cooperation with European partners, European universities, European Space Agency, which was engaged into Luna 25 mission. And also, Russia was going to cooperate in its moon exploration program with India. And Russia was trying to synchronize Luna 25 with Indian Chandrayaan 2. But because of delays, because of some technical troubles with politicians, the Luna 25 probe was delayed many times. Firstly, it was scheduled for launch in 2014, the year of annexation of Crimea, and the year when the Russian war against Ukraine began.
I didn't know that.
Yes, then
Wow.
then it was rescheduled for 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and then finally 2023. And the problem is that Luna 25, the main purpose of Luna 25 is a technology demonstration because there should be a following missions. Firstly, Luna 26, the lunar orbital probe, and Luna 27, the lunar landing probe, I mean. And the following missions they should have more advanced scientific equipment because on Luna 25, with all its weight and dry weight of Luna 25 is 751 kilograms. The weight of scientific equipment is no more than 30 kilograms. The main purpose is technology demonstration of landing.
So what does that tell you? I mean, yeah, is it just for the demonstration of being able to land? Even though Russia has proven that it has the capability to land, it
Yes,
has the heritage of it.
yes. Russia is trying to prepare itself for following missions: Luna 26 and Luna 27, and then there should be Luna 28. But currently, it is postponed indefinitely. As head of Roscosmos, it's a Russian state-owned space corporation. He said several days ago, Luna 28, it's a sample return mission. Luna 28 will be somewhere after 2030. We don't know yet. But original plan was starting with these probes, Luna 25, Luna 26, Luna 27, in cooperation with India, in cooperation with Europeans. It was also a preparation for Russian participation in American moon exploration program. Firstly, Gateway station, and then widely Artemis program. But currently, After the full-scale invasion in Ukraine on February 24, 2022, Russia lost this prospect. Russia made its homework, but without any proper, clear, and certain prospect. Because Luna 26, Luna 27, they are dependent on European electronic equipment, scientific equipment, and so on. And currently, Russia is trying to replace this scientific equipment with its own equipment. And even on the example of relatively simple Luna 25 demonstrates that for Russia, it's really, really hard to replace, to substitute the imported equipment, because the original dry weight of Luna 25 was 590 kilograms. Currently, it is 751 kilograms. Why? Because of Russian electronic equipment, Russian space grade electronics, some electrical components, communication system is just heavier. It's more simple, heavier, and even if Russia is capable, was capable to do this on Luna 25, we don't have guarantees that Russia will be capable to do this with Luna 26, Luna 27. As a chief of the project, of the Russian Moon project, told early this year, they just started to replace, to substitute the European electronics. Luna 27 is scheduled for 2027 or 2028, 2027, 2028. And they just started to do something with this probe. I'm not sure that we will not see a further delays in this Russian moon program. And the problem is that for what purpose? Okay, science. Yes, science is good, but when you threaten your scientists with espionage articles, espionage charges, when you prevent your scientists from cooperation with American colleagues, with European colleagues, sometimes with Indian colleagues, and even with Chinese colleagues. So, what is the future? And when you kicked off from Gateway project, from Artemis program, what is your future? And of course, the Kremlin is trying to use Luna 25 as a great propaganda campaign. Look, despite all the war, all the stuff, all the confrontation with the West, we are still capable to do something on the moon. Let's cooperate with us. But even the People's Republic of China, with whom Russia was trying to cooperate, even the People's Republic of China does not look optimistically on the partnership with Russia. When Xi Jinping came to Russia in March 2023, one of the important parts of his negotiations with Putin and with the Russian government was space cooperation. And the People's Republic of China told, we are going to cooperate with Russia according to our long-term program for space cooperation that is scheduled for 2027. And they don't have any, vision beyond 2027. And so the Russian moon exploration program is a victim of the Russian foreign policy, of the Russian aggressive behavior.
Let me just jump in and ask you this, though. I mean, how did the people of Russia, though, feel about it? I mean, are they excited? Are they like, oh gosh, I hope it doesn't crash? I mean, what's the vibe there? I mean, what are they feeling?
Uh, as I can see, people are trying to be enthusiastic. People still trying to be optimistic. They see that Russia sent something on the moon. They, of course, they don't care about the amount of scientific tools on board of this probe. They don't know about Luna 26, Luna 27. Probably they heard something from the Russian TV channel that Luna 25 is just the first step here. And of course, they want to see some success. But their main motivation here is also political and ideological motivation. Oh, the whole world is against us, but we are still capable to send something to the moon. And for me, it's a pity because I don't see, too many people who are going to apply for technical universities in Russia, who are going to apply for space education, for rocket science, some astrophysics, and so on. Not too many people are going to be space scientists, but almost all Russians are wanting to be proud of something, because currently there are not too many things to be proud of.
Well, speaking of pride, though, like Modi, I'm imagining that the stakes for Russia's president, Vladimir Putin, the stakes for him politically and perhaps even personally, especially for maintaining the perception of power, as it wasn't so long ago that his chef's personal army was driving up the road to mete out some, rough and weird justice. For Putin personally, how critical is this mission?
For him personally, it is a critical because of his reputation, because of reputation of the authoritarian system of Russia. But comparing to Narendra Modi, you know, I was able to contact Narendra Modi several times, and to some Indian politicians and high-ranking officials during the last years, because I visited India, some forums, and so on, and I saw how the Indian ruling class is caring about India's development, economic development, scientific development, technological development, social development. And I see how the Russian ruling class doesn't care about this. It cares only about its power, its reputation, and so on. That is the main problem. Because when Putin talks to Modi, Modi has a vision, long-term vision of India in this world. And Vladimir Putin does not have a vision of Russia in this world.
I gotta ask you guys, what's the state of the relationship between Modi and Putin, which is kind of a weird way of saying between India and Russia. But considering these two men and their sheer power to write their nation's future, it's kind of fitting, right? I mean, traditionally, the two nations have been friendly, lots of educational and scientific exchanges. They've had a healthy arms trade. They've stayed out of each other's way, even when that has been somewhat morally bankrupt, such as now with India refusing to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But I got to say, as an outsider, and I'm just adding up some recent developments like Russia signing a defense agreement with China, while China has even resorted to using force to plant a flag in Indian territory. You've got India now as an Artemis Accord signatory with the US, plus the Quad group that includes the US, Japan, and Australia. And on top of all that, with, now India and the United States having pointedly taken real steps to deepen their defense cooperation, especially in the space domain, but also the maritime domain and the cyber domain. I've got to wonder, what's the status of this relationship? It feels like it's fractured.
Well, I can answer that, and then I'll be very interested to hear Pavel's point of view as well. So, I think if you look at the state of India Russia relationship, the convergence between the US and India started around 2000 with Bill Clinton's visit. So, there was a clear shift in Indian thinking that the United States is going to be a key partner. And I always remind people that, because people tend to think that this is something that has happened under the current Modi government. But no, this has been in the making for several years,
Decades.
decades. And so you had George Bush and the nuclear deal that the US signed with India. That was just an amazing development for India, because historically, India has been very non aligned. And so, for the first time, India started talking about convergence, strategic partnership. emerging countries in the democratic world order. So India was already starting to have that narrative. So now today, when you think about the Modi and the Putin relationship, what I see, what Modi has done is that Modi has very clearly defined what is in India's national interest. And the more important thing is that Modi has parliamentary majority. He is democratically elected. So you might think that some of his behavior appears authoritarian, but actually this is supported by being democratically elected, and not once, but twice, right? So as Pavel was saying, there is a particular vision that doesn't get reflected in the Western media. When you go to India, you hear it. Modi's vision for a clean India, Modi's vision for India becoming a major technological power, Modi's vision for jobs, for development has resonance in Indian society, right? So, given that, what Modi has decided, and it's very clear that the relationship with the United States is going to be a key factor. And the relationship, not just with the US, but also countries like France. Modi visited France during Bastille Day celebration this year. So, it's going to be extremely critical. And I think what is happening on the moon today also has to be seen from a strategic perspective, right? So India has really invested in becoming the first nation to land on the south pole of the moon, right? It's a symbolic desire. But again, if you listen to the local narrative and the speeches that Modi gave in Hindi, he pointed out that Chandrayaan 3 is going to be the first probe that's going to land on the South Pole. Now it seems like Russia is going to beat them to the game. It appears like that, right? Because the Russian landing is on August 21st. Schedule landing is August 21st, and India's landing is 23rd. Russia took a much more direct approach to the moon. So I think this is going to create, it might not be visible, but this creates that kind of anxiety between Russia and India. And the two men, Putin, who is not democratically elected, whereas Modi is, there seems to be fractures in the relationship. Another way you can see fracture is that Russia has, in recent years, reached out to Pakistan and, as you said, signed up very critical agreements with China exactly at the time when China was actually fighting Indian soldiers in the line of actual control. And Indian strategic thinkers will remember that, right? That particular incidents happen. So it seems like the relationship is strained. It seems like Modi has taken a foreign policy decision that collaborating with the United States is very good for a confident major power like India, and also trying to send a signal to China, Russia, that India has choices if it wants to make that decision.
And Pavel, how do you see it?
I see these relations in a broader context of cooperational projects. And we see that the golden age of Russia-India cooperation, technological cooperation, military cooperation, has already passed. For instance, when the Russian invasion into Ukraine in February 2022 started, Russia was unable to supply India with on time, supply on time air defense systems, some aircraft engines, and so on. Russia tried to engage India into fifth generation aircraft project, and India decided to go alone without Russia because Russia is not too trusty partner, unfortunately. And even the story of Russian moon exploration program and its attempt to cooperate with India. India decided to go alone because the Russian side was unable to propose something significant here. Russia proposed only delays, and delays again in its moon exploration program. The same is towards China, because originally, not originally, but 3 years ago, Russia was trying to synchronize its moon exploration program with Chinese moon exploration program, but because of delays, this synchronization became just impossible. The Chinese side decided to go alone because Russia is not trusted partner. despite the fact that the People's Republic of China plays a tricky role in Russia-Ukraine war. China is not going to, to put everything in the Russian basket. I presume that Russia-India relations at current point, it's just some tactical relations. India may purchase Russian oil with a significant discount. Why not? India does this because of its national interest. India still can get some Russian military equipment. Why not? If India is still dependent on the Russian military technologies in main battle tanks, in aircraft, and so on, why not India does this? But towards the long term prospect, towards the strategic relations, towards the further cooperation, no, India does not have optimism here, because what Russia can propose to India, nothing. The United States can propose India technologies, business models in industry, in high tech industries, in space explorations, in nuclear power, and so on. France can propose the same things. Israel can propose India some military equipment and some technologies. And even in space, India pays a lot of attention to the private space sector. Because of what? Because of Indians' intention to be a part of the West space market. European Union plus United States plus Japan plus Canada and plus India itself. And I can imagine that in coming years, India and Japan will conduct common missions in outer space. But I cannot imagine how Russia and India can cooperate in outer space in current circumstances.
So let me ask you guys this, because this is the burning question that needs to be answered. So India launched on July 14th. And as you said, Modi was in Paris for Bastille Day at the time, which is also a major spacefaring nation. So it's kind of a pride thing too. It's kind of cool, right? And I just kind of wonder, was the choice of the state for Russia to launch now just suddenly made, or does it just seem that way? And then to expend so much fuel, the trajectory that they've taken, launch on August 10th, arrive basically 11 days or under, and to beat India out. I mean, is this an intentional snub, or is this just coincidence? Is this like one of those sort of weird coinky dinks?
Well, the better part of me would like to hope that this has nothing to do with beating India to the South Pole. This is what Russia had always intended. The Luna 25 has been in the planning for some time. It has been delayed, as you know, and they were thinking of launching later this year, but then suddenly they launched, right? So the better part of me would like to think that it has nothing to do with beating India to the South Pole. Now, the strategic part of me also understands that India actually made a very strategic choice this year in June when they signed the Artemis Accords, right? So, as you know, Russia has been very critical of the Artemis Accords. In fact, Russia, if I remember right, designated the Artemis Accord as an attempt by the United States to colonize the moon. They use the term colonize because there's private industry involved. And as Pavel was saying, India is also very much interested in private development of space. So, given that,
It's also a trigger word for the developing world and also for India. I mean, to colonize the moon, to use the word colony
yeah,
with an Indian audience. I mean, the word choice was for real.
but
Yeah.
India joining the Artemis Accord creates legitimacy for the United States, led Artemis lunar development. Secondly, it counters such a narrative that Russia put out because India, of course, is the biggest sufferer of British colonialism, has that history. And so I think there could be, we might not see it in the surface. And of course, both nations are reassuring and stating that this is fine, the moon is big, We are not going to be disturbing each other's mission. But underneath it, there has to be the anxiety in Russia as well that India is very clearly moving out of that particular strategic, that golden age of relationship that they had. There is probably that calculation as well. And don't forget, if India is the first nation to land on the South Pole, it'll become the first Artemis signatory to land on the South Pole of the moon. Even the United States has not done that. And so that itself sends an amazing signal. So I think that has been a part of the calculation as well. Russia is not seeing India, in my perspective, as India, the nation that they once had such a great strategic partnership with. Russia is now seeing India as part of the Artemis Accords. So there are these calculations. I would like to think that there are strategic calculations as well. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but yeah.
Pavel, thought?
I agree with Namrata that Russia could be and must be more polite with its partner because there are not too many partners like India in this world for Moscow. But I'm afraid, or not afraid, but I presume that it was, kind of interagency miscommunication, miscalculation, because Roscosmos had its own purpose. Finally, we need to do this. Finally, we need to launch Luna 25 to the moon because we do have a launch window for this. And I believe that guys in Roscosmos they didn't know that India was going to launch its probe at the same at the same moment,
No.
or people who knew this information, they did not communicate with people who were responsible for launcher and for the program. And the trajectory of Luna 25, really fast trajectory, it is determined not because of Russia in a hurry or something like that, but because of Russia is trying to repeat its 1966 lunar mission. I mean, the Soviet lunar mission, because they didn't use too sophisticated software. They didn't have the network.
Nobody had sophisticated software then in 1966.
No, currently.
Just saying.
Currently, Russia still tries to make things simpler, and Luna 25 is going to the moon according to the classical ballistic algorithms, and that's why India can land on the moon earlier than Russia, because Russian side does not know when exactly the Luna 25 probe will land on the moon. They do have several days from August 21 to August 26, and they will decide in coming days when they will make attempt to land, because they don't know yet how the things are going on.
Wow. I really had no idea that was going on. Okay. All right. So now that we have an understanding of the depth of the fracturing and whether or not, or rather maybe a cloudy idea about whether or not this was really an intentional snub or it just sort of is a coincidence that Russia's going to roughly the same area at pretty much the same time. I'm kind of wondering if, is this going to turn into some sort of unfriendly competition in the long run? Is this an example of this, of what's going on the moon, or and what does it mean for the space domain generally, right? And more particularly, what does that mean for Russia and India going forward? I mean, this is happening now. It seems a bit funky, but how is this going to be for the long run?
Well, if I may start, so I think if you look at the comprehensive space agreement that India and the comprehensive agreement that includes space that India and the US signed this year, you can see that the shift in Indian space collaborative efforts. So historically, India has trained with the Yuri Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center. 2021 Indian Air Force pilots trained there. But today, India has signed an agreement with the US to train their astronauts in Johnson Space Center, right? And then next year, India is hoping to collaboratively go with the United States to the International Space Station, exactly at the time when Russia has announced that it might leave the International Space Station, right? And so, fast forward, based on these kind of developments, and this is an interesting development for India's own foreign policy. So I think India's, especially the BJP government, has historically, including under Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who was the former BJP prime minister, has historically desired a better relationship with the US, at the same time ensuring that the relationship with Russia remains at an even keel as well, right? So, fast forward, say, if I look 10 years from today, if you think about the space situation, I think India has clearly betted on the US side in this regard. If you look at the moon, the US has a long vision of what it wants to accomplish, for example, on the moon with the Artemis program, and India is a partner to that today, right? And so, in that, I do not see a Russia India collaboration happening because of that organizational, institutional, also US international traffic on arms reduction and other issues will come in, right, in terms of collaboration. So, very important institutional reasons. I think people don't realize that 2020 changed India's mindset vis a vis Russia and China, because in 2020, there were 20 Indian security personnel that died in a battle with China. And that had a deep impact that is not reflected in the conversations here. When I was listening to the Indian media, the anxiety, the anger that this has happened, that Chinese PLA, People's Liberation Army personnel crossed the line of actual control. And within that particular framework, Russia was pushing for a deeper relationship with China. I think that has entered the Indian calculation in the long run. And as I know, China Russia has signed an agreement to develop the moon together. They have not retreated. The China National Space Administration continues to project that as a very important part of their relationship.
Oh, they've got another partner too. They've got, Venezuela. Sorry. I know I'm
No,
snickering.
it's okay.
Sorry.
But President Xi Jinping wrote an op-ed when he visited Russia that was published in Xinhua that pointed out that for him, Russia is the most critical partner in the era of today, and India is seeing all that, right? And so, fast forward, I see there will be even more diversion because of India's own national interest calculation and the concern that Russia might be playing into the Chinese camp. And so these are all based on India's national interests. Even the relationship with the US is based on that. And so I see a difficult collaborative effort happening given this calculations.
Pavel, what do you see 10 years out? What do you think we're going to be at?
10 years in forward. If we will not dive into the global war, hopefully,
Well, that's a cheerful opening.
we will see that international space station partners without Russia, but with India, which probably will replace Russia as a key non-Western partner in outer space. They will realize moon exploration manned program. Also, the private orbital stations, maybe one, maybe a couple of them, created by American, European, and Indian companies as a contractors and subcontractors and so on, and Japanese private firms and so on, they will cooperate in low Earth orbit. And it will be a great space market where other countries like Brazil, like Mexico, like Egypt, they will try to join this market. We will see China, which will try to go alone, but probably China will try to extend the network of space partners. And China will work on the low Earth orbit, but also will try to send its cosmonauts, astronauts, takenauts to the moon, maybe together with partners. But partners will be dependent on on People's Republic of China, of course, and towards Russia. Even even the top managers of Roscosmos Corporation, they don't know where Russia will be in 10 years in space and what Russia will do there. Because they expressed these, feelings in their interviews, in their public interviews in Russian state-owned media. And underlines, you may read, that they hope, and their only hope, that the war will be ended and that they will be capable to come to Washington, D.C., and to Brussels and to Tokyo and ask, guys, forgive us. Please take us on board. Please take us on board. That is the level of Russian strategic space planning. People who manage Roscosmos, they understand very well that Russia cannot go alone in outer space, because in previous 30 years, Russia was completely dependent on cooperation with the United States, European partners, Canada, and Japan. And Russia was interesting to space powers like India and China because of Russian Soviet era technological heritage and because of Russian partnership with the United States, Europe, Canada, and Japan. Because Russia was on board of the International Space Station, because the American space shuttles were docking to Russian National Space Station Mir in 1995, 1996, and so on. Currently, Russia can propose nothing to India, can propose nothing to China. In G20 meetings, Russia proposed Algeria and Egypt and Indonesia to join Russian space program. But what Russia can propose to Egypt and Algeria, if Egypt and Algeria and Indonesia may cooperate within the Artemis Accord without the threat of being sanctioned?
Well, I actually have, if I just have one small point to make, and that is that what Pavel said is so important and insightful, and I think that is why the Russian Lunar 25 probe has such significance for me, right? So it is so true that Russia, post-Soviet Union era, depends a lot on collaboration for its own capability in space. We do know that the European Space Agency canceled almost all its lunar cooperation agreement with Russia. So fast forward to August. If Russia successfully lands on the lunar South Pole, Putin's strategic move here is to showcase to those nations that stopped collaborating and the very, very debilitating Western sanctions that Russia still has that capability.
That Russia still has the right stuff.
And don't forget, soft landing on the lunar South Pole has been tried. No nation has succeeded, at least those who tried. Japan with iSpace crashed in the last few minutes. And if so, Russia succeeds, that is a big signal to the world that we still have it, right?
Exactly.
And so that's what I think Putin is hoping to achieve. So I am so sure that the Roscosmos scientists are under enormous pressure to succeed because of the situation that he finds himself in. So that's why, mark my words, if Russia succeeds, everybody will start talking about how Russia still has it in terms of space capability, right? And so that's something that we also need to keep in mind. And if India succeeds as well, I mean, it'll be an interesting. So that's why I'm glad you're speaking this particular topic, because it's so strategically significant.
Exactly.
Namrata, Pavel, thank you both so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
That's it for this week. If you like what you're hearing, follow the Downlink on Twitter and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. For the latest defense news and analysis, listen to the Daily Defense and Aerospace Report podcast hosted by Vago Muradian, and listen to Kavish Ships to hear the latest on what's happening in the maritime domain. I'm Laura Winter, and thank you for listening.